She was young, beautiful, and irresistible. A 19-year-old nurse in training with an angelic face, a soft voice that could soothe even the most hardened souls, and a touch that promised warmth, care, and healing. She walked through the halls of the hospital with grace, her uniform neatly pressed, her hair cascading just enough to frame her delicate features. Every doctor who met her saw potential, intelligence, and charm. She was the kind of woman who made men glance twice, made them lean in when she spoke, made them forget, just for a moment, their responsibilities, their vows, their sense of control. They didn't know that beneath that polished, professional smile, there was something else. Something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. She wasn't just another nurse, another student eager to learn, another bright-eyed professional in the making. No, she had a plan meticulously designed, honed with patience, sharpened with a purpose that only she understood. She was playing a long game, one that no one saw coming. Before we dive deep into this gripping tale of love, betrayal, and vengeance, like and subscribe for more shocking stories that expose the darkest corners of human relationships. It started subtly, a lingering touch on the arm, a knowing smile, a soft laugh at just the right moment. She made eye contact that lasted a second too long, let her fingertips brush against theirs as she passed a clipboard, whispered words of admiration that melted away their defenses. She listened intently, made them feel important, special, and chosen. It was never forced, never rushed. She let them think they were in control. One by one, they fell for her. It didn't matter if they were young or old, married or single, ethical or reckless. Once they stepped into her web, there was no escape. They thought they were seducing her, that they were the ones taking the risk, the ones bending the rules. But in reality, she had been orchestrating every moment, every glance, every touch. She knew what they wanted before they did. She knew how to make them feel powerful, desired, irreplaceable. And once they were deep enough, once they had given in to temptation, there was no turning back. They never questioned why she was so willing. They never stopped to wonder why she seemed to have no fear, no hesitation. They never thought, even for a second, that she wasn't just giving them pleasure. She was giving them something else. Something invisible. Something irreversible. By the time the first doctor tested positive, she had already moved on to the next. And the next, and the next. At first, no one connected the dots. Hospitals were busy places, full of stress, late nights, and quiet affairs that no one spoke about. But soon, whispers began to spread. Doctors, highly respected men, some of them married, some of them fathers, receiving news that shattered their lives. How? How could it be possible? And then, one doctor recognized her name, a nurse, young and beautiful, someone he had known intimately. He thought of her smile, the way she had traced her fingers along his chest, the way she had whispered his name in the dark. But she was just a student, just a girl. It couldn't be her. Or could it? Another doctor, another diagnosis, another whisper of her name, and then another, and another. The realization hit like a tidal wave, but by then, it was too late. She had become a ghost before anyone even realized it. By the time the first whispers began to spread through the hospital, she had already moved on to her next target. The doctors, highly respected, well-dressed, and confident, had no idea that they had all played a role in something far bigger than their own desires. But who was she? Where did she come from? She wasn't just any nurse. She had been chosen for this path long before she ever stepped foot into the hospital. Born into a world of contradictions, she had learned early on that beauty was both a gift and a weapon. Her mother, a woman who had spent years surviving on her looks and charm, had taught her that men could be manipulated with just the right combination of sweetness and distance. Her father was a ghost, a name she had only heard in passing, a man who had left before she could even remember his face. She grew up watching her mother play the game, learning every move, every subtle cue that could make a man fall. But her childhood was not just one of quiet lessons in seduction. It was marked by betrayal, by pain, by something far darker than she ever spoke of. She had her first encounter with devastation before she even turned 18. A man she trusted, someone older, wiser, someone she believed had loved her, had taken something from her that could never be returned. And when the blood tests came back, when the truth was delivered in cold, clinical words, she realized the weight of what had been done to her. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Men only take, but if you're smart enough, you can take back. And so she did. She entered nursing school with a quiet determination. She learned quickly, worked hard, and charmed her instructors. No one suspected a thing. They saw a bright, promising student with an undeniable presence. Her intelligence was sharp, her hands steady, her instincts impeccable. But behind her practiced smile, behind every soft word she spoke, a plan was forming. It started with curiosity. How close could she get? How far could she go? She studied their weaknesses, watched how the doctors spoke, how they carried themselves, how they let their guards down behind closed doors. She learned who was vulnerable, who was greedy, who couldn't resist temptation. And then she began. Late nights in the hospital, stolen moments in empty hallways, whispered secrets in cold rooms. She made herself unforgettable. She made them think they were the ones in control. She let them believe they were special, that they were different, that she had chosen them because she couldn't resist. But in reality, she was choosing them for something else entirely. One by one, they fell, and one by one, their lives were changed forever. She wasn't just playing a game. She was delivering justice, her own version of it. And by the time they realized the truth, she had already moved on. She was methodical. Every move was calculated, every encounter planned down to the smallest detail. It wasn't just about seduction. It was about power, control, and revenge. She knew exactly who to target. Some were chosen because they had wronged her, men who had once taken what wasn't theirs, who had used their power and status to exploit others. Others were simply weak, greedy, reckless. It didn't matter whether they were married or single, experienced or naive. The only thing that mattered was that they thought they were in control. She started small. A lingering touch on the arm, a soft whisper of admiration, a playful text sent just past midnight. She made them believe they were special, that she saw something in them no one else did. They fell for it, one after another. Some were easy. A late shift, an empty on-call room, a stolen moment behind locked doors. They couldn't resist the temptation of youth, the thrill of secrecy, the rush of something forbidden. Others took more effort. She played the long game, letting the anticipation build, drawing them in, making them crave her before she finally gave in. Or so they thought. She was careful, always careful. She never rushed. She let them believe it was their idea, their decision. That way, when it happened, when they gave in, they would never suspect a thing. But the infection, that was different. It wasn't always the same method. She infected the traditional way. Skin against skin, lips against lips, passion mixed with poison. They never questioned why she was so eager, why she never hesitated, why she never seemed concerned. Others, she was more creative with. A misplaced syringe, a contaminated foreline, a needle that pricked just deep enough to go unnoticed in the heat of the moment. Some never even realized what had happened, and by the time they did, it was too late. They had already played her game, and they had lost. The first case didn't raise any alarms. A doctor, mid-40s, recently divorced, diagnosed with HIV. His colleagues murmured sympathy, but no one thought much of it. These things happened. Maybe a past relationship had caught up with him. Maybe it was a tragic coincidence. Then came the second case. Another doctor, same hospital, same devastating diagnosis. And then a third. Whispers began to spread. Questions that had no answers. How could multiple doctors from the same hospital, all men who seemed to have little in common, end up with the same fate? At first, no one dared to speak of it aloud. Hospitals were breeding grounds for rumors. But this was something else. The infected men were professionals, men of status, men with reputations to uphold. Some were married. Others had built careers on their image of discipline and control. Admitting the truth meant confessing to something darker. But as the numbers grew, silence was no longer an option. A pattern emerged. Each of them had been seen with her. The young, beautiful nurse in training. The one who was always there, always smiling, always whispering. Some doctors, too ashamed to admit their indiscretions, stayed silent, hoping no one would connect the dots. Others, unaware of the storm brewing around them, continued to brag in hushed tones about their encounters until they learned the truth. And then, fear. Security footage was pulled. Hospital records were combed through. Nurses whispered amongst themselves. Files were examined, timestamps cross-checked. And then, the realization, she had been everywhere. Every late shift, every quiet hallway, every stolen moment. She had planned this. She had played them. And worst of all, she had never once lost control. She knew exactly what she was doing. The police knew they had to be careful. She was intelligent, methodical, never leaving a trace that could directly link her to the growing number of infected doctors. But the pattern was undeniable, and investigators needed solid proof. So, they set a trap. A doctor, young, confident, exactly her type, was chosen as bait. He played his role well. A few chance encounters in the hospital hallway, a lingering gaze, a suggestive comment. He made himself seem just desperate enough to catch her attention, just weak enough to be an easy target. She took the bait. A meeting was arranged at a hotel. A familiar setting, a familiar game. She moved with the same confidence, the same seduction that had worked so many times before. But this time, the moment she stepped inside, the game was over. Police swarmed the room. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled. A slow, knowing smirk spread across her lips, as if she had expected this all along. The trial was just as dramatic as her crimes. The prosecution painted her as a predator, a woman who had turned seduction into a weapon, using men's desires to destroy them from the inside out. She played with their lust, their weakness, the prosecutor declared. And when they fell for her, she didn't just take their dignity, she took their lives. But her defense was just as chilling. They all wanted me, she said in a voice that was disturbingly calm. They should have been careful. Some gasped. Others sat in stunned silence. Did she feel guilt? Or was this just her final act of control, holding their attention, making them hang on her every word, even as she stood on trial? The verdict came swiftly, a long sentence. No chance of freedom. But as they led her away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time, her voice as sweet as ever, her smile unshaken. I only gave them what they wanted. The damage she left behind was irreversible. Some of her victims tried to move on, to rebuild the lives they had so carelessly risked for a moment of passion. But the truth followed them. Their names were whispered in hospital hallways, their reputations permanently stained. Some lost their careers, others their marriages. A few disappeared entirely, unable to face the shame. One doctor, once a respected figure in his field, quietly resigned and left the country. Another, devastated by his diagnosis, spiraled into depression. Some fought back, trying to reclaim their dignity. But how do you escape a past that refuses to be forgotten? And yet, despite the destruction she caused, one question remained. Was she truly evil? Or was she a victim who had turned into a predator? She never showed remorse, never begged for forgiveness. But was she always this way? Or had someone, twisted her into the woman she became? Perhaps she had been hurt first. Perhaps she had been betrayed. Perhaps the men she destroyed were not as innocent as they seemed. Or perhaps she had always been this way. A master manipulator, a woman who understood the power of desire and used it to exact revenge in the most chilling way possible. And now, the final question is for you. Was she a heartless killer, or did society create the monster she became? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story left you speechless, hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking true crime stories.